Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 17 of BDAchat. This week we're talking about website strategy and user experience. Now, joining me this week, we've got the usual motley crew. We've got Camilla, we've got Rob, we've got the captain of the ship, David.
Hello.
I know a lot of you have tuned in for another insightful and meaningful word of the week from David. So we'll get to that later. We may mix it up a little bit. I know it proved a massive hit last week. If you've missed it, episode 16, go check it out.
You've got the whole 10 minutes to think about this now.
The whole 10 minutes.
He's giving you like.
He's got thinking man's face on.
And social media went wild about it.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, lots of comments.
It just literally annihilated Trump just for one day. So, website strategy, user experience, that can only mean one thing. That we have to hand over the podcast to the tallest man here, the man that knows the most about user experience, among a great deal of other things. It's Mr. Rob. I was almost going to say Mr. Rob Jarvis. Jarvis,
Thank you very much.
Take it away.
Yeah, and it's, I think it's a broad topic. Like everything we talk about in these 10-minute slots, they're quite broad, so we can only focus in on elements of it. But I think with user experience or website strategy, I think the clue's really in the title. I think what we've got to be doing is putting the user at the center, looking at the user's wants and needs when we're approaching any sort of online web project. So long gone are the days where we used to kind of just sit there and come up with brochure designs for websites, where it was pretty much the company's message just being beamed out there. We kind of, over the last 5 to 10 years, I think you've seen it flip on its head more, where it's more, the word user-centric is being used a lot more, and so it should, because at the end of the day, the people using your website, they're the ones you're servicing, and you've got to give them what they need and what they want. So for us here at BDA, I mean, a good website strategy, a good user experience strategy starts with discovery. And I think discovery is so key. I remember years ago, I used to work on projects. There was literally no time for discovery. You'd jump in, you'd get designing, you'd get building.
It's all about what it looked like.
Yeah, all about what it looked like, the aesthetic. Get the content on there, get a messaging on there, and get the website built and out there. But now what we see is much longer periods of discovery. And this is twofold for me. So you've got the discovery where actually BDA, we will understand your business. And I think that's really important. Before we start to understand users, we need to just understand the business. So again, that's looking at things like your values as a company, your USPs, your objectives and overarching marketing strategy, anything that's going on. So we get a real feel for who you are, what's core to your culture as a business. So that's the first part of this. But the biggest part then, once you understand the company, is really understanding those audiences. So how do your audiences break down? What are the different segments? What are the demographics? Now, sometimes companies don't always know this detail. So we go through a process called persona mapping or empathic or empathetic persona mapping, where we start to look at those, break down those segments into a more individual basis. So we can understand their wants, their needs, where they go for information, who influences their decision-making process. So again, it's understanding those audiences. And I'm going to go into more ways in which we do that in a minute. But once you understand those audiences, it's driving down deeper again with website strategies, like understanding how they behave on your current website or on your current online entity. So it's looking at how they get there, what they do on your website, how they interact. Where the entrance points are, where the exit points are. And again, it's about understanding all this information because you're constantly building up this picture of that user to understand actually this is what they need and this is how they use your website. So there's methods again we use there. So how do we get to that? It's all well and good. We need to understand. And I think one of the things is there's a mixture of data sources. So there's qualitative information and quantitative. So qualitative is kind of words and feelings and thoughts and evaluative information, whereas like quantitative is pretty much numbers. So again, I think in this room, I think what we do on a lot of our projects, whether it's video or whatever, we actually go in and we interview the stakeholders. We have those discussions. And again, it's about really understanding the business. So that could just be one-on-one interviews, a stakeholder workshop. I mean, Lee, on your videos, do you have to get the stakeholders involved, get them talking in the early stages?
Yeah, you have to talk through a project, don't you? You have to find out what they're trying to achieve, and from that you design the video around their ultimate goal, and the information that they're trying to relay. they're kind of. I think what you've hit on more is that there is all more along the lines of, well, what's the actual? It may be what the company wants, but what's the information to the customer? It's that way round, because I think me and David had a chat the other day about it. Sometimes you can get lost in the business information of everything, and the actual what the customer wants is sometimes different from what the actual company is trying to promote, and you have to look at it from a different angle. You might get to the same. Hopefully, you'll get to the same conclusion, but you don't want to just bamboozle someone or a customer.
And sometimes what we think, as you said, what we think is completely different to what they're thinking. When we did the new BDA website, we used some software to kind of record, was it Hotjar? Was that the one we used for our one? And it was really weird, like different colours that we'd put on font, for example, people saw as links, even though it wasn't particularly, that's not where we were pointing people to. So our thought of people are going to want to click here, it was completely wrong. And when you see how people use the page, and those types of software are brilliant, actually. It spins it on its head. You can't make assumptions. Or
No.
we all make assumptions, but when you see actually somebody using it and how they use it, it's normally completely different. And it's quite nice to be proved wrong or...
Yeah, and I think this is the really good point. So these internal surveys, you get the business point of view, what people in the business think they should be saying. But then what we do, we flip it on the head, like you just said there. So we get these user surveys. So we actually go out to the user and we raise questions with them. Or we may observe them using the website or use software to record them using the website. But what that gives us then is a comparison. So this is what the business thinks it needs to say, but this is actually what your users are saying. And then we do the comparison. Because I think our job, or any marketer's job, is to bridge that gap. Obviously, you've got to get the business message across, but you've got to give the user what they need. So we're there to bridge that gap, make sure the user's needs are met first, but the business still relays their message in the right way. So again, that comparison is absolutely key, because it isn't just the business message we want to get across when we're looking at any website strategy, any user experience. And that's where that qualitative information comes from.
But the user experience is almost like I kind of see it as, bear with me, sliding mirrors. Odd.
Go on.
But
Go on.
sliding. Let's imagine that the podcast or anything that you produce is your content, and I see it as a way of user experience, as a way of putting as few sliding mirrors in front of your content, so the user can select which mirror they want, but they can still see the content. They can move through the user experience, moving the windows out of the way, depending on where they want to go, and then they select the content that they want. So it's almost like they can see the content from the beginning, but it's a little bit frosty because it's got frosted panes of glass in front of it.
Oh, wow.
You can still see it, and then as you move through it, you select what you want. So you're not blinded by too much information, but you can just see enough information to go, yeah, that's the stuff I want to get.
I'm there with you as you're describing that. Like,
You move your way through it, you see.
Yeah, and
it's all about the content, isn't it? I mean, what a user experience is a way of selecting what you want. And
exactly that.
You know what you don't. You know, because I like websites. We all like websites. And you can clearly see a bad website just from its user experience, just from its layout, just from its UI, just from the buttons, the fonts, all of that jazz. That's user experience. That's UI. And it's the experience you navigating through it and selecting the content you want. And the easier that process is, the better the UI.
The user should not have to use too much brain power thinking about how they get to where they want to go. It should be intuitive, it should be natural. And again, that's where that segmentation comes into play. You know, this specific person or this specific audience, this target market here, they need this information, and that they need it at this stage of the journey, or the buying process, or the conversion process. So again, it's making sure you deliver that right message. It's that old analogy, the right message to the right person at the right time. And that's what good user experience promotes. It's getting people to that, showing them the right information, making that journey as easy as possible.
So
do they want to read something, or do they want to watch a video?
Yeah.
Do they want to have some web chat? Some live chat with somebody, or would they rather send an email? It's all
Completely.
those different things.
Are they coming to your website because they want it's credibility? Are they looking for credibility because they want to work with you? Or are they looking for insight? Or are they just having a nose around? You know, so again, it's understanding those different user types and how they go through the websites.
So with that in mind, when we redid ours,
yes.
we did the stats, we did the analysis.
Yeah, so we did the quantitative data, looking at a lot of the Google Analytics, what pages were popular, what wasn't being used, where people are exiting, finding the dead ends.
Big words, nice. So we did all that.
Yep.
So from that, what rose to the top that we had to fix or change in terms of our website?
Well, what we found is that we had 3 tiers to our website. And the third tier was literally getting no traffic. People were literally diving in, probably 1, maybe 2 clicks in.
So what were the 2 things that we had to bring up then?
So that's a good point. So there was things we had to lose. So we had deep buried services within digital, within data, within strategy, etc., within motion that really weren't getting a lot of traction. So we kind of said, well, do you know what? No one goes there, and we don't need to be saying all that. So we lost some bits. We didn't lose them. We decided to get rid of them. But then we knew that people kind of either wanted to come here to see the work we'd done because they're thinking of working with us. So they want to see what we've done, or people in the industry want to have a look at what you're doing. So we realised that portfolio piece, that case studies, whatever you want to call it.
It's more around the content people wanted to actually see. Instead of reading about what we do, they wanted to actually see it. Or they wanted to contact us. That was a big one. So where our office is, just make everything really visible.
And that's what we've done on our website. So contact, raise to the surface.
And the team pictures as well.
Yeah, the team page, really important
so
about the culture.
Yeah.
So again, we saw these bits getting the traction. These were people were dwelling and engaging with. So these needed to be brought to the surface. And that's what we're doing. And we weren't shy to go, actually, because sometimes it's hard to get rid of stuff. You know, when you clean out your house and you don't want to throw away that thing, you have an attachment. And with websites and your content, it's exactly the same. When you have it redone or you look at a new, it's hard to get rid of that. We've always had that. We've always said, you know, about the board of directors or this or that. But sometimes you've got to make those tough decisions backed up by data, by the surveys, by the qualitative, by the quantitative information that you've got to actually go, we're going to cull some of this because we want to make it simple for those 3 main users who come to our website, those user types, to get from A to B and get what they need.
Yeah, I think, you know, the BDA website, I always saw it as a homepage or a coming together of creative people that just want to make creative magic, difference, just dare to be different, you know. And I think that's very evident in our website. From what we've changed and what the case studies and the work that we've put together, and showing the team, and I think that's quite daring. You know, you get some. It's not I say the daring, but you do get a lot of websites that hide everyone behind the board of directors.
Yeah.
You never see a team. You know, it's just all these. Well, who actually does work there? Yeah, and I always think that's nice to see the team come. It's nice to see the work that goes into it. It's nice to see, and maybe not always the pleasure points, even some of the pain points, to see how you've worked through a project, to see the struggles that you've gone through, and to see how you've tackled them, and use the team, use the knowledge, use the resources to figure out those problems and move on.
Can I ask a question, Rob? So we've got all this insight.
Yeah.
You understand the audience. You understand what the business goals are as well. How do you then take that and actually turn it into something that you can see, feel, and touch as a website?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good question. I think, you know, it's about using all that information you have to hand to prioritize what's important to that user, what's important to the business. So it's about literally kind of filtering out what needs to be there and simplify people is the key word in this. It's about simplification. If you don't think it pays any benefit in that journey, take it out, take it away from it, declutter. So once you start to do, you know, once you have that information, you start to build, well, this is the content that we need, build those user journeys, you know, how do they get from A to B and what do we need to show them along the way to support that journey to make sure they end up at their destination. So what information do we give them? What areas of navigation do we offer at certain points? And with so many websites that we've worked on recently, we've seen so many dead ends where that's where everyone drops off because we're not keeping them in that loop. We're not taking them back into the next relative thing, the relevant thing. So again, it's building those user journeys. Once you've kind of got your content, an idea, those user journeys worked out, then we can start to kind of map those sort of content hierarchies on pages. That's often the wireframing process where you're going, well, this is the most important content and this is what needs to be on this page. And again, working with the business, understanding that user information to then develop those areas. And of course, you know, that's quite a long period of time going into that. So that, you know, you should put your time there because it's easy to move wireframes about and this thinking about than it is the final design or build. But ultimately, you're trying to get to then, you know, how does that interface work? Because the the UI plays a massive part of user experience, obviously, because is that positioned right? Is that the right color? Is that the right size? Is that going to work on this device? So again, it's just making sure that all that upfront work's in place, that foundation is there. So when you finally get to pick up Sketch, Photoshop, whatever it may be, very much Sketch in our case, you have all the information and you're not making assumptions. And then you're designing and creating based on hard fact and evidence of actually what you've got, what you've got to create to support your user. So yeah, I think a top tip in this for me would be like Google Analytics. Everyone's relied a lot on Google Analytics for years. Don't just rely on Google Analytics. It will give you numbers. It will tell you what's popular, what's not on your website. But don't just rely on it. Back it up with those interviews, those surveys, whether it's internal stakeholders or user bases. But also there's sales data, which may be kept in your CRM, which you maybe want to bring into the mix to understand. But on top of that, there's things, and Camilla mentioned it earlier, Hotjar, Crazy Egg. They actually record a user's movements on your website. Obviously update your cookies, etc., and your privacy policy. But get that on there, even if it's for 1 month, and understand how people are using your website. And I don't know who's seen it in action. I think most of us have. It's the things it can show you that Google Analytics won't is invaluable. So you can actually see how someone moves through the website, what they click on, where they hover, and you actually paints a very different picture of just numbers. And that's where we saw that those coloured links. They weren't links, they looked like links, but they were just a different colour and people were clicking it. So again, we were able to change that and keep evolving. I think that's the other key point. I know we're talking strategy, but your strategy doesn't just stop once you deliver it. It has to keep moving. So use these tools to keep learning, test different ways of doing things, and keep evolving your websites.
Yeah, I think that's invaluable, Rob. I think too many times, I think we've been praised that in the past. Is it you redo your website and then you don't evolve it for 6 months, and then it's like anything, picking it back up after 6 months is it's hard. I think you have to continue with the strategy, continue with the content, continue changing things, tweaking things.
Yeah.
A good website is a website that is continually loved and continually updated. And I think that's excellent, Rob. Anything else?
I've rabbited a bit there.
You have rabbited on. There's 4 of us here. I've literally been able to plan my day in my head whilst obviously listening to you.
David fell asleep.
And actually realised I had some toothpaste from the kids on my arm. I thought it was paint. At one point I thought, how have I got paint? Anyway, I don't know. So that was uber insightful. If anybody wants to hook up with Rob and talk more about website strategy, UI, UX, you can hook him up at
Robert. No, that's a lie. It's Rob at Thinkbda on email, or you can message me on Twitter, Robert Jarvis.
Lovely stuff.
That's it. I don't really invite people to connect with me.
No, well, you should. You should. You're an insightful chap.
Thank you, Lee.
Share the knowledge.
You don't know what to do with that conversation.
No, thank you, Lee. Well, thank you.
Right. Anybody? Anything else? Anybody want to add this week?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
Lovely stuff.
No.
Camilla.
Loads to talk about, but
Dare.
enough for now.
What is the most exciting thing that's happened to you this week?
Wow.
Someone
leads next to him.
Did you see that?
I don't have anything.
Nothing.
We're Wednesday morning. Nothing massive has happened.
It's been a whole week. What? You had the
We
weekend
have.
and
We've had 2
nothing.
days.
Nothing. Okay, no. Robert, what's the one goal that you want to achieve by next week?
A new portfolio piece on our website. Very exciting. It's a great one. I can't wait to get it on there. So I know we've got Easter in between, but back end of next week, keep your eyes open, people.
Yeah, Easter.
There's an absolute banger coming.
It's Easter coming, so if you could choose an Easter egg, what Easter egg would you choose?
Heston Blumenthal's dippy egg.
I would like a Cadbury's cream egg.
Cadbury's
It's
cream
actually
egg?
a Cadbury's cream egg, but a really big
What?
one.
How much sugar there is? David? No, David.
Oh,
David, we only
listen
come.
with your head.
A protein egg.
It's David's word of the week.
Do you want one word or a sentence this
No,
time?
David, the internet is on fire.
Don't break it.
So
Hardly.
I don't want to interrupt or disrupt or.
I think we should all pause.
I think we do need. I think that's a very good point, Camilla. We do need to allow a moment of pause
And reflection.
and reflection whilst we await or welcome on the new word of the week.
So my word of the week, and it is one word this time, is
He's learning.
investigate,
Oh, yeah.
Investigate.
or indeed discover.
No, David, he's done it again. That's 2 words. That is 2 words.
He can't help himself.
No, well, it's with the and, it's 3.
Or
Investigate and or discover.
You have
Sorry,
to choose. We
okay.
have to choose one.
Any reason? So
Why?
Why that? Dave?
I think based on our discussion today and
a good
Rob's
word.
main thrust of his
Rob's thrust.
very singular discussion was discover and understand your audience.
It's getting longer. It's getting longer. Stop him, Lee. End of the podcast, guys.
Right,
It's getting longer.
done.
David,
David,
no, David. I thought that was brilliant. You've taken on board everything that was talked about today and wrapped it up in 2 words, or even 1 word, or even 3.
Or a sentence.
That was lovely. Well, we can't leave it there. We'll just wrap it off. Your favourite Easter egg?
My favourite Easter egg,
If you could have an Easter
a
egg.
green and blacks
Oh, of course.
dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate,
something.
green and black
Of
dark
course.
chocolate. Lovely.
I'll put it at 12 or a whisper.
I like
No,
it.
fruit and
Well,
nut, fruit
no,
and
12's
nut,
good.
fruit and nut. Right, well, that's it. Happy Easter, everybody. We'll be back next. We don't get an Easter break, so we'll be back. Obviously, we get Good Friday, Easter Monday. Yeah, we're back next week. The topic next week, I'm not
I
sure.
think we've
what
still
we'll
got to decide upon it, actually.
Yes.
do. We're not sure yet. We'll go away and think about it.
It
Come
may
back.
well be about video.
Okay.
You, Lee.
Rabbiting on about me. Lovely stuff. Enough rabbit for me. Happy Easter, everybody. Have a lovely break, and we shall see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.